Okay, I started recording in progress.
Got it.
And, okay, how do I get her to, multiple participants can share? Do I put that, is that what I put on?
Yeah.
Okay, that's on.
Okay. So again, this is not complete, but it was just, I think provides a little more consistency and includes the relevant information that you wanted. So basically, if you can see, if it's big enough, it was the distinctions that I kind of reworded. I can see if I can zoom this a little bit more. Are you able to see the distinctions under the blue and green columns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for in the blue, I said that distinctions, that therapy animal is a planned part of the treatment sessions conducted or directed by a health or human service provider within the scope of practice. And then the thing that kind of changes across the sheet is, in this case, physical or psychosocial emotional therapy goals are defined and documented by the professional in the medical or treatment record. And then if you move to the green, this is where I don't have the same level of knowledge as some of you, but I think I sorted out what was there and have a distinction. The first one is being that the therapy animal is a planned part of classroom sessions conducted or directed by an educator within their scope of practice. Academic goals are defined and documented in the academic lesson plans.
Mhm.
And then the next one is the psychoeducational component. This is where I get a little fuzzy. And then the next one is more kind of personal development. And if I understand correctly, it's not necessarily a clinical professional providing these kinds of services. So I thought that kind of helped distinguish each of those areas, especially under animal-assisted learning or education, where there's so much variability as far as the type of session or program and also who is providing it. So those are my thoughts. And I don't know if this is, again, the accuracy, because of my expertise is more in animal-assisted therapy. So I'm interested to know what people think of that and if that's a helpful way to distinguish the different areas.
I missed the last meeting. I watched it carefully and I looked carefully at the two documents. And I thought there were inconsistencies between the latest diagram and the definitions suggested. And I think also Meg mentioned the same thing, that animal-assisted activity seems to appear in different places. So my understanding was that we kind of all agreed that animal-assisted treatment and animal-assisted education are two clearly defined areas, and then with a lot of sub-categorizations, and then we could work a little more on distinctions. I personally don't think that the distinctions referring to the human credentials should be part of the definitions themselves, because those are the most variable ones across countries and so on and so on. So I think more of the goals and maybe type of structure, adherence to a protocol or no protocol, something like that should be criteria. But then I thought that the third column, the support services, was going to be an umbrella column that includes animal assisted activities, which is what 80% of the public, the lay public, thinks right now is AAT and is not, and all the other support sort of services. But then why are, for instance, court dogs appeared, this is not the actual
This
one
is
that
not the
we-
latest one. This is not.
No,
There.
this is
Can
my
we look
copy,
at the
Daniela.
one?
and
Yeah,
it-
so the latest one, I looked at what Amy sent, the latest one.
Mhm.
This isn't it.
Right.
No, this is what I was doing to try to
Okay.
clarify distinctions. And I didn't get to the orange section at all. But what I did do, and we talked about last session a little bit, what I did in my personal copy was I've grayed out where there's redundancy. So like the.
That's what I was going to mention, that there are a lot
Right.
of
So those are
redundancies.
grayed
So
out on this one. I will
Okay.
stop sharing those so that someone can pull up the.
I mean, if we could go back to the one that everybody has, which is, I think, the one that Amy provided
Mhm.
last, maybe that would be
Right.
a bit easier.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
The only thing I wanted to point out was the distinctions that I had.
Right. yeah, that was the focus of Laura's, was just on the distinctions, because we hadn't
Right.
addressed that at all.
Can I clarify, Laura?
Yes,
The
please.
distinctions that you wanted to add, are you saying that one of them was, because they've gone now, but one of them was academic, one of them was psychoeducational, and one of them was
Personal
personal
development.
development? Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't fit so clearly, is what I
Okay.
would say to you,
Okay.
because that's an area that I train in and I also practice in.
Right.
And those three distinctions don't fit so precisely as
Okay.
you've just, but they do
Yeah.
all fit within, like Daniela was saying, but I don't
Mhm.
think they could be labeled so specifically across those three
Okay.
areas, but they
Okay.
all fit within broadly the animal assisted education
Right.
group. Yeah.
Right.
It's I think we probably need to decide how we want to handle that in terms of the mapping on the charts, or how we don't,
Yeah.
and whether we take care of that in the actual definitions elsewhere, or a part of the document elsewhere to say that we're attending to it or not, we're not attending to it. But I think in the actual chart, it's going to be, I don't know, I'm interested to hear what other people think about whether we can get that specific to try to group, for example, the therapeutic horsemanship and the humane educate, like to actually make those distinctions so precisely on a chart, because we are going to exclude, because we're not such a thorough committee, we are going to naturally exclude or include things that will mean that it won't be so inclusive or accurate.
So again, we're sort of going back and forth on the specificity issue, and I do think that if we are flexible in our thinking, we could think of something like humane education as belonging in two different overarching categories, depending on how it's done. So I have no problem with having humane education under AAE and then humane education under the support services, if it's done in a completely different way without being part of lesson plans, but maybe somebody comes from the museum and talks about that and that.
Right.
So do we agree on that, or do we have to have absolutely mutually exclusive names for the subcategories? Because I think that will, keep us in this never-ending oscillation between what goes where.
Well, I think if it's explicitly named, then it'll be much clearer.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe, humane education as part of, lesson plans or something of the sort, in which humane education really is involving maybe an animal in the classroom, and something that distinguishes it from the much more, support like humane education than you get.
What
when
is support
somebody
human
from the
education? I'll ask a question. What is human education in terms of support? I'm not sure what that refers
Well,
to.
I think in the last time you were talking about, well, do we call it humane education if somebody from the Museum of Natural History comes and talks about rainforests and species that are disappearing there? I mean, it could have indirect, let's say, connotations to emphasizing empathy, because you want to get the kids to be empathic to the species that are disappearing because we are destroying the rainforest, right? Something like that. But that's not the humane education that would go under animal assisted education, right?
Right. And that's what the distinction's for. The distinction box
Right.
is to separate that out in that kind of obvious place.
So maybe we don't need this humane education under support services at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
So would
Who
it be
is
under
supporting?
AAI? Would it be under?
But then what about the farm and barn programs? I think Miyako or someone from Green Chimneys was sort of contesting that, because then where do their farm and barn programs go? They don't want to be.
We moved those under the human animal interactions. So they were like observation programs, humane ed, not provider led options. Those were like the, you go to the zoo, you go to the nature center where they're not facilitator led. And I think that this humane education was one that was facilitator led. Like you said, it was somebody from the library, someone from the museum. And there is a benefit for them being there, but that's where it, like, if they, I don't know, that's where it was being kind of gray.
Couldn't the farm and barn programs, like the structured programs at Green Chimneys, would those not even, could they not also go under the green area?
Yeah, they do. A lot of them, it depends, again, it depends who's delivering the service, what are the desired outcomes, and yeah, because this is just observation program.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it on your own and you're just observing, and there's not somebody saying
A petting
like,
zoo or.
Exactly. So yeah, we were looking at like this type of humane education.
So this type of humane education would maybe refer to everything that's going on Green Chimneys.
Green Chimneys, definitely, I would say, because
yes,
it's just not the problem saying is in farm and barn. Well, what does that mean? That just happens to be the setting where this educational stuff
exactly
is done.
exactly.
There are other farm and barns, but it's pure recreation.
So I
that's
think
why it goes in the second area.
If we don't want to come up with more and more confusing labels, could we agree that the same label could go under different categories depending on how it's interpreted or whatever, and then we need rubrics to specify what are the distinctions? But that still leaves a lot of redundancies among these three columns. To my mind, visitation programs, whether airport, hospitals, are not very different from dogs on campus, because they're dogs visiting campus during exams. There's no difference there. And they're not different from dogs in dental offices. They're not doing anything else. So maybe this whole thing is just visitation program, including resident animals in the specific, like a dentist office or a nursing home or whatever, where it's not the animal visiting, but it's the client visiting with the animal. But it's still visitation in terms of how the handler is supposed to respond and what the interaction with the animal is. So I don't see why we need all these different categories besides visitation.
And if we then go ahead and create a document written in paragraphs, and we say, and examples of these are and then we can go ahead and give. I agree with that. We give the general.
However, I think there's more work both on the part of the human and the animal for the courtroom dogs and the crisis intervention animals. So maybe those are more than visitation. The same for riding for the disabled and horsemanship. So that's sort of, to my mind, depending on the involvement of the human and the animal, there's a little more active role for each. So one would be visitation. The second column would be this more sort of engaged, specialized area of crisis intervention. But again, what's the difference between this crisis intervention and this crisis intervention? Aren't they
I was
the
a
same?
bit surprised, on what Amy is showing right now. If you go down, I talked about that.
Yeah, but we hadn't touched, remember, like at one point, we didn't touch all these. So it is possible. We just moved stuff over. There's copy paste just to save space. So this was not done at all. This is not a completed.
Of course.
It was just examples that we were giving.
Okay, so can we decide that each of these should be in just one category? Like maybe the visitation that would include dogs on campus, and you had somewhere
Visiting for
dental
reasons
offices.
of bringing down anxiety. I don't know, something which.
Right, something like that, but the handler doesn't really do anything specific with the animal. The animals are there for the people to interact and so on, the clients. The other part, again, I'm not very familiar with what the crisis intervention and the courtroom dogs do, but my impression is that they do more than the visitation dogs do. And then, so that could be crisis intervention, courtroom, together with horsemanship services and riding for the disabled as a more sort of active involvement of the handler. And then
I can say from knowledge, personal knowledge in terms of crisis intervention, I mean, there are different types. There, for instance, when the Twin Towers went down, there were people who came, they weren't professionals, but they came and met with the families and stuff like that. And also with the firemen who were there, with the rescue workers, to help them deal with the situation in the here and now and calm down and relate to themselves a little bit more. And that was one. And another type of crisis intervention, which is, for instance, being in Israel, we've had wars, and 2 different wars. I've gone to shelters, bomb shelters, with a couple of my animals. And that was a different type because as a professional, I was there. And talking with, it was mostly with kids that I was working with, but about the idea of where is their safe place, where's the animal safe place, where there's safe place. The kids were discussing their fears, totally, putting it onto the animals. I'm fine, I'm not scared, but don't let that, rabbit or whatever out there because it's dangerous because somebody might have put poison on the grass.
So you're basically describing one activity that looks more like the visitation and another that's much more specialized.
Right. On the other hand, I still see what I did as support work. It wasn't therapy. I was going into a one-time thing. That's why I think you can put them together.
No, so can we have like that kind of crisis intervention? Again, the same label should go under different category, under visitation, and specialized crisis intervention under the more sort of more engaged, more specialized. Like the second column could be something more specialized type of support services.
Professional support versus, and this is where
exactly,
community social work, because there's community, it's definitely not therapy.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't move them in here in treatment or therapy, definitely not, because there's still just one occasion, a couple of occasions, whatever, there's no treatment plan, but it requires a specialist.
Right.
That's where the distinction, if they were in the same column, they could be in 2 columns, but if they were in that column, it would say underneath, and the distinction that this is, might be a one-time event provided by someone, in the human services professions or,
Right. And then I think this one is redundant then, because I think we've put this already in other, right? So the crisis intervention here might go into this one or this one, the humane education from here and the barn and program, farm programs, are these the observational ones or are these the educational ones? Or is this like a third category of humane education?
What if the barn, farm barn programs like at Green Chimneys were called, we labeled farm barn care programs and shifted them over to the animal assisted education or learning?
That would be my preference,
Maybe
actually.
adding the word
yeah.
care so that there's some action
Because I think that
versus observation.
And I think that people there would say that the students who are engaged in this do have their educational plans, right? So
Right.
there is some sort of,
Well, it's
I don't know if it's
educational.
outcome.
It's also psychoeducation
Yes.
going on there. A lot of I've been there a couple of times, and
Yeah.
and yeah, it's definitely on the psychoeducation thing as
Yes.
opposed to
Yes.
only education.
So then I think that gets rid of this third column, and then it's a little more simplified. What I'm not seeing here, but again, that's just an example. The kind of programs, not the pet dog training, but the programs in prisons, for instance, where the outcomes are sort of psychoeducational for the prisoners, although it's
I was
I wouldn't
wondering
call them
about that.
education.
I was wondering about that. The programs that we have in Israel that Phil Tedeschi came over
Right.
and he helped us.
Right.
That's very
So-
psychoeducational.
I would also put that either under education or under the specialized programs, because the human is more active and the human gets something out of it and so on. I would look at that sort of in a similar way to horsemanship and so on. And the actual main trainer is just sort of supervising what the prisoners do. So it doesn't have to be a psychologist or a mental health professional or anything like that. So I think that sort of clarifies a little bit. So for all of these, we have, you know, a simpler distinction into two types of activities that are related to, at this point, whether it's specialized or not specialized for here. Again, for here, the same thing, whether it's specialized in terms of teacher credentials or not necessarily a credentialed teacher leading that activity, but it's still an educational activity. Here, I think they're sort of all, these are more mental health related, and these are not so much more physical health related, but again, I could see why there are two columns here.
Amy, is it possible to make that just a little bigger?
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
I can try.
I don't know if you can get rid of the column on the left with the
With this one?
two
You can.
thumbnails.
At the
No, I mean
bottom? At the bottom
Yes.
left, there's an arrow that you can get rid of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Oh, that
nice.
helps. Thank you.
mm-hmm. I can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if there's any others we want to move around? I know there was some conversation down here. There's a lot more conversation, so I just want to make sure.
So are we still keeping the label therapy dog for the dogs that are involved in AA treatments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not for the dogs that do visitation? Because then we need a name for the dogs that do visitations.
Visiting dogs.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's the other
There's a different
committee.
group
They're
is
coming
doing
up with
that.
that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the other committee has that's their task, but oh yeah, so we can just fix those whenever, but if we want to address.
Can we go up to the top again, just so I can just see, yeah, so we've got this just as support now, animal assisted support, not support. Or did we have, yeah, we did have SP. Remind me,
Programs?
Amy.
Was it programs, support?
Animal
programs?
assisted support programs.
Or practice? I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
Programs.
And we did that
Yeah.
because, can you
This is
remind the
This
group?
is AAS also, and they were both AAS.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that was our distinction.
Yeah. That was a really important one. In all the documents, it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah. So the AASP is really important. Yeah. Okay. So are we actually debating whether we need the distinction boxes in the charts? Is that what we're talking about? Like, or are we still wanting the distinction boxes in there? Like, I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's up for debate. That gave us an opportunity to kind of specify like the difference. So if somebody's only looking at this, if they didn't read the article and they didn't pursue anything further, if they're just looking at this,
They wouldn't understand.
right? So the distinction just lets them know, like, okay, what do I need to know? Okay, I am a mental health provider, or I'm a physical health provider. I have goals, what, blah, blah, blah. So they just read the distinction as a way to help define where they go. And then we can dig deeper in the article and in the rubric. So
then everything that's under visitation is what used to be called animal assisted activities, basically. Does that word appear anywhere else? Do we need that?
I think we don't need it anymore.
yeah, we don't. And to answer your question, Meg, like the definitions that I sent out, it was an old one. That was something that was done just to work from. It was like, instead of starting from scratch.
Oh, okay.
What we had put together, and then we can build on it. But
yeah, I had a lot to say about that, so that solves that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it's an old one, but
okay.
Just a start.
Would it be helpful on this chart somewhere to say in parentheses previously known as, because I mean, it's been out, around forever.
Well, technically all of these would fall under animal assisted activities. All of
that was the initial
problem right here. So you're saying visitation. So like here
I don't know, previously known as animal assisted activities, AAA.
Even
I don't
AA activities, visitation, AAA / AAA, something like that, so people know.
We want to,
or in parentheses.
I mean, if we want to abandon the term animal assisted activities,
I wouldn't have the it in anymore. If we're not going to be using the term. I you know where it says underneath that the handler criteria based on AAI registration rules. It's the same problem. If we're going to bring in old terminology, we'll have to change that.
Right.
So why is that there? Is that a distinction or what? I'm not sure I understand why this explanation is here, because it's not a component of these. It's like a distinction or something.
Yeah, it does seem more like a distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and sorry, I cut out before, Amy, so I didn't hear what you said, but I did hear the very beginning, which was that your definitions were from an old document. Yes, and I think sometimes that's the thing that gets a little bit confusing. Yeah, that's where I was left getting a little bit confused about. Sometimes when we do something, we get so far and then we send out documents that are old. It feels like we've gone back.
Right, but that's why I said that this was a start. It was an old document. It was definitions that had been started previously that could be edited, so we didn't have to start from scratch.
Okay. Yeah.
So I tried to note that.
Sorry, I missed that. So do we just you know, start from scratch, like with the definitions of what we're talking about now.
can.
Okay.
You can. I didn't know. Sometimes it's easier to start from scratch. Sometimes it's easier to start from an existing. So I just threw it out there, but
Yeah.
we don't have to use it.
Yeah.
Well, my impression was that they're actually very good, except for being a little misleading in terms of which labels go where. Because I think we really want to, before going into all these examples and so on, we just want the 3 definitions for the 3 major columns up here.
Yes, exactly.
So we want to agree whether those 3 definitions would involve something specific, like mentioning the credentialing of the human or not, or going with some other criteria for that. And I think that's why
that's what, so oh, that's Nancy's copy, right? Yeah, like again, this was just an old thing that we had, but it was set up in a way that was like the definition, and then it was similar to the rubric.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to kind of organize this.
So yeah, this could change in whatever way. Like when these were put together, it you know, it was very important that we see, I see that it's crossed off, but we wanted to make sure that the animal welfare piece was actually written into the definition. People have the training in animal behavior and whatnot, that they're not, you know, they're not forcing, coercing, exploiting the animals.
No, the reason why I crossed it off was because at the very beginning, at the top, go to the top. With all the interactions, it's common with all the interactions, and so that's why I put all AAIs promote well-being. And so there's no reason to repeat it again and again. It creates so much to read, and oh wait, is that same? Is it different? And then I find myself going back and forth seeing if it was different according to which definition. But once you say all of them, then it's, you know, it's an overarching comment.
Right. But I guess the only caveat is that if somebody, again, if you have a new person, a novice person, and they don't look at the whole thing and read the whole thing, and they just do a search for AASP and it's not in there, then they don't know to look somewhere else for it.
Right.
That was my.
And also, I like the fact that the preparation. At one point, I put changed training to preparation. I like the word preparation because it bothers me a lot, the training, because not, for instance, you know, the way I use, you know, in Israel, if I ever said the word used, I would get screamed at. The way I integrate my animals, wow, it's a big thing here. It's a big thing here. So the way I integrate my animals, okay, I don't train anyone because for my particular purposes, and I know not every intervention has the same purposes as my purpose. I want the authentic dog who's going to misbehave and not listen and, you know, create a mess sometimes and stuff like that. So and also, you know, I've got rats and I've got, you know, this guy, you know, and hamsters, and I don't go through any training. But I do have to prepare all of them. I have to try, you know, bring ones that are appropriate, that are not going to create a real, you know, danger in the room or dangerous for them. They all have to be used to having people around, and you know, things. So I love the word preparation as opposed to training, and because that includes training for places where you do need to train, but also includes all the other stuff.
Absolutely. So this is where I see, like, as far as definitions that we can use to describe, oh, wrong one. Where'd I put it? Nope, where did I just put it? Wasn't it just up here like a second ago? Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, so that would contribute. So like I kind of look at that, the definition as like the rubric that Daniela has, so we can modify it to
Mhm.
better fit. But I see like this as like the easiest, the simplest graphic, and then that slightly more detailed, here's a rubric, so we can look at that, and then the narrative that kind of describes it all in a little more detail.
Okay, where would the some of the horse issues go? I mean, Meg, I'm waiting to hear from you.
Oh, the therapeutic riding.
Yeah, again, it's the therapeutic riding with more social or educational stuff would be one place, but the actual the physical type of stuff, the rehab, might be in a different place. I don't know.
Bless you.
Sorry, was that directed at me?
Yes.
I missed that. Yeah. What was the question, Nancy?
No, okay. I'm just in the graphic up above. At one point, there was horse.
Yeah, there's like all this, right? The therapeutic horsemanship. I think that was still the question. Yeah, bless you. Yeah, therapeutic riding, like
Riding for the disabled in Australia and therapeutic riding. I think that they were under the green psychoeducational goals. Is that what you're asking me, Nancy?
Yeah, that's wonderful, because I know one of the various graphs that we've seen tonight, they had rehab under education, but that's not education. The physical rehab stuff. People, working with people who have problems with balance or using their muscles in a certain way.
Yeah.
That's not, I don't think
right now there's horsemanship services for rehab in orange.
Yeah.
You want to move that?
Oh, I see. There it is. Okay. There it is. I see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And
it's not something I do, so I
Right.
can't speak to it. I think Miyako was the one that was speaking to it more in terms of therapeutic riding, but that's quite different to the riding for the disabled. And again, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, in Israel they call it all therapeutic riding. And so I like the fact that it's defined in different ways on this graph.
Okay. So is there any other part of it that we need? Like, do we feel like that's been resolved, or does that still need to be?
Meg, what do you think? You're the expert here.
I have a question to follow kind of what Nancy was saying. If it is an occupational therapist or a physical therapist working with a person with disabilities on upright posture, balance, coordination, leg
strength. That's treatment.
Pardon me?
That's treatment.
If it's an occupational therapist or physical therapist, that's one thing. But I know a lot of therapeutic, all I know about is Israel. I really don't know. But, they take someone with, they went to high school, then they took a 10-month course, and they're taught the basics, whatever you can teach in 10 months.
Right.
And they're taught about emotional stuff, and they're talking about the physical stuff, and they come out, oh yeah, we can do it all.
And what are they calling them? What are they calling
therapeutic riding? Officially, therapeutic riding instructors. Many of them call themselves therapists.
Right, but they are not therapists.
No.
Occupational. Okay, right. So okay, and my question was, if they are therapists, isn't that then animal assisted treatment? But
yes,
you answered that, and we agree. And that's, I just wanted to make sure that that would be, okay.
It'd be interesting to have Nina.
And treatment is not species specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Perfect.
Yeah. And once we have everything and we have it all written out and spelled out, we can bring it to Nina. We can bring it to other professionals in the field just to see like what we're missing, right? Like we've been staring at it for so long. Sometimes you need that other perspective.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we could definitely do that. Okay. So, but do we feel it as it stands, everything's okay? Do we need to move anything, or let me make it a little bit smaller? oops, where's my?
Do you want to, because I can't see the whole thing. Oh, there we are. Yeah, so we've got, do you want to just read it out? So under animal assisted treatment, we've got, that's all very clear. We're not really discussing that. Is that correct? So under animal assisted education, the two key columns that we've got is educator led, i.e. they're a qualified teacher or non-educated led. And therefore the qualified teacher has the academic goals. So that's down that left line. And then the non-educator led, they have the social and emotional or the psychoeducational or the personal development goals, and they're down that right side, but it's not run by a qualified teacher. Is that the main distinction that we're working with that's really clearly articulated there? And the farm barn care and the humane educator. So what I teach is, we call it equine assisted learning and animal assisted learning. So they would both fall under that right column, which is the non-educator led. They're not qualified. Some of them are qualified teachers and they choose to do both the academic goals as well as the psychoeducational or personal development goals. But I mean, I'm not attached, and things are happy, you know, we're happy to change things. So for example, going forward, at the end of these recommendations, I would happily change our certification to align with this. So it would be animal assisted education or equine assisted education, but the rather than EAL or AAL. But I don't know whether, because there's a lot of it in Australia. There's a lot of equine assisted learning, a lot of equine facilitated learning, and quite a lot of emergent animal assisted learning. It might want to be labelled, and I'm not sure whether it's just at what point in the chart or the definitions or whatever, where again it describes, like we've been describing, that's where previously the equine assisted learning, equine facilitated learning, animal assisted learning would now fit under that right side of the column in the animal assisted education. So that would be the only other thing that I don't know what we're deciding about, how much to label in these charts and not label in these charts, and just take care of it in the definitions.
I mean, well, it's just there as a question. So if it fits.
Yeah, I don't need it to be there. I'm just asking the committee, like, that's the thing that we teach that, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that could be written in the, like in the rubric. I mean, because we're going to miss things, of course, because everybody does something a little bit different. Here's my program. It's not quite, but if we can just point out the main distinction so that you kind of know if I'm doing, you know, I'll use my own. I work with kids in community, who are in community mental health programs. I am there, but I have somebody else who facilitates, and she's not a clinician. There is an educator who's there, but none of it fits into that. We do socio-emotional learning in that group, but I would still classify it as an animal assisted support program, even if I'm leading it because of the nature of, you know, and we're 2 hours a day, twice a week for 10 weeks. It fits every other profile, but when I look at it, that's the distinctions are not met. So it would be under this basic prison-based animal program or a community-based animal program. Or a training program. But
so what, you know how under the green section we've got on the left side, educator led, again, that's more distinction again, rather than an actual category. And we've also got under the educator led, we've got the animal assisted psychoeducation. We probably need to, I don't know, again, where this all goes, about whether we're getting rid of distinctions and we're just having the labels. But the animal assisted personal development and the equine assisted personal development and the equine and animal assisted learning, etc., facilitated learning, it's just mixed up here. So under animal assisted psycho ed includes social and behavioral learning. That should be on the right, because what we're saying is the distinction is, yeah. So do you want to, should we move these distinctions around, or are we getting rid of them? Or?
Right. I mean, teacher faculty makes no sense where it is. So maybe teacher faculty incorporating animals for academic cognitive goals, or academic goals, animal assisted involvement for academic purposes, something like that.
Goals, you were right.
That's what I had put into the distinction.
Right, but what are these rectangles then designated? To me, this is the type of program or the type of practice. It's a barn care program, it's a humane education. So then it can't be a teacher. It is, I don't know, lesson plans involving animals, something.
Academic goals defined by
classroom is a good one, yeah, something like that.
Classroom sessions or classroom education or class education.
Yeah, I think that covers this, yeah, including.
And then will it definitely be in a classroom?
Doesn't have to be in a classroom, but I don't know.
That's why academic.
Academic oriented.
Yeah.
Yes. Animal assisted activity.
Education. Yeah.
Academic, something like that. Yeah.
And why is that not a distinction anymore, and it's gone up to a?
Because it's a content, so it's okay. Well, instead of education, I don't know, lessons, I don't know, educational practice. I mean, it's got to be the content of the activity, which is, it's usually session, lesson.
Content.
Yeah, maybe just even academic content or academic focused, or
focus is good.
And then on the right is the psychoeducation, personal development focus.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Okay, so that's the only thing. So this would be like a reading program. If you every day you go with somebody and you read to the dog, kind of a thing on a regular basis. They're writing it into your chart, your notes, your academic record somehow as part of your plan. So it just has the academic focus, which is different than having like, guinea pigs in the classroom, or the
right,
or just a fish tank.
That could be humane education still.
Yeah. Education.
Yeah.
Okay. Could we move the third category down that you've just put the psychoed above the humane education, Amy, so that it's clear that they're examples of, and do we need them in there? I guess we do, to give a clear distinction. And I think we need the therapeutic writing under there in its own box.
Okay, I have to fix this. I don't like when they don't line up, but I can't use Google Slides, so we'll just.
Yeah. No. Well, it's got to be therapeutic writing with psychoeducation goals.
Exactly, but see, this is why, in a way, it's tricky what we're doing, because we're contradicting ourselves, because in a way, the two boxes under the AAE are distinctions, aren't they?
Unless you can say something as the animal assisted education, and you could say including equines or something like that. Because it really is.
I think because we are listing the other ones on the right, we have to list therapeutic riding.
Okay.
Because I think that's what Miyako
Mhm.
and was, pretty strong about that.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll just have to swap those distinction boxes around the other columns.
Yeah, I'm not even 100% sure that they're right. We haven't gotten down that far yet. So they may have just been copied and pasted, or maybe not. Let me see. So we just want to make sure, like, read them and make sure that they're, I'll make them a little bigger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they've got similar words, but they're slightly different.
Maybe I think this was supposed to be consistent, like rather than like a regular.
Oh yeah, that is under the right column, because it's part of the lesson plan provided by the degreed educator. Yeah, so that's correct. So it's the one underneath that's the can we just create one distinction box?
Yeah.
That includes that second one?
This one over here, or this one right here?
Oh, no, that's okay. Does the one underneath say the same thing?
It just says psychoeducation instead of socio-emotional.
The types of goals. Yeah, this says educational or socio-emotional goals for humans. This says psychoeducational goals.
Yeah, I think generally speaking in Australia, I'm not sure around all your other countries, but socio-emotional and psychoeducational
Are pretty much the same thing.
pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
So I think that's redundant. I mean, it's saying the same thing as the one above.
Okay.
But did we not say that the one above was with for academic goals?
We should switch the two of them around. Yeah.
Which
Therapy animal is a planned part of classroom sessions conducted or directed by an educational provider within the scope of practice for academic goals. Documented in the lesson plans. All right.
Where are you reading from, Laura?
I was just pulling together what's been said and what I had written before as a distinction, but what you people had said as far as the academic, the lesson plan being a specific distinction, that it's a lesson plan, that it's academic.
Could we add cognitive or academic in front of socio-emotional? And if you want to repeat that there for the socio-emotional, that does not involve a teacher, licensed teacher.
Yeah, I don't know. Does social emotional belong there under?
It should be on the other side. Should the other side.
Could be on the other side then.
Yeah.
Would a teacher that's doing social, emotional or psychoeducational work, but they're a qualified teacher, would they want to have that their work? Does it matter?
Doesn't matter, I don't think.
In the left or the right goal, it just, when they're talking about it, they're simply going to say the same term, which is animal assisted education.
Right.
Yep.
But there should be somewhere it said psychoeducational, psychosocial education or something. Right now, it's not anywhere.
But you want it in this side over here.
Yeah.
So this is psychoeducational.
Yeah, and do you want to say psychoeducational goals and or psychoeducational and personal development goals for humans.
Right.
And maybe say the facilitator may not be a licensed.
May not be, because
May
it
not
doesn't,
be.
it could be a teacher, but yeah, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
instance, here in
And we
Israel,
can
it's
include
usually
May.
over there.
counselors.
Right.
They call them educational counselors.
exactly.
Like in the school system, they're the ones who are doing group work in the schools, and they're bringing a lot of the behavioral issues and social issues in a group.
And the distinction there is that it says they may not be a licensed degreed educator, but is knowledgeable about animal behavior. But I would say rather than just knowledgeable about animal behavior, they're actually knowledgeable about facilitation and animal behavior. Because their key scope of practice to be saying that they're doing animal assisted education is that they have to be trained in facilitation. Otherwise,
In the human animal bond.
Otherwise, they're literally just belonging from the other
Right.
second page that Amy has put together with just the human animal interactions. Right. They're literally just that, doing that if they're not trained in facilitation.
Right.
Right. Should this be the same here too in the teacher?
No, because it says the teacher is providing lesson plans. I mean, that's the job of the teacher. It's different. It's not just a facilitator.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we done with that? Because I have a question about the support system. Something seemed to be.
Can I ask, are we going to the animal handler thing below, or are we not doing that yet?
That's been the sticky one.
Did we get anywhere, Amy?
We have not.
We thought we did and went back. We wanted animal specialist, and then people had a problem, said that was problematic for other reasons. I like the word specialist, but other people saw problems with that.
If we just say human partner, is that too diminishing of the human? Human partner and its animal? His, her animal? Because they call
if we're partnering with a therapy animal, can we call handlers therapy animal partners?
Something like that. I mean,
not the word therapy. No.
What's it?
Not the word therapy.
Oh,
no.
Just animal partner?
But why can't, could we just say what, I mean, what is the, let's think of the purpose of that diamond. What is it to say?
It's I guess it was a placeholder to remember to discuss it somewhere else. I don't know that it necessarily had to be a part of this document, but it was something that we wanted to address, so it was just plugged in as a placeholder.
Okay. So, I mean, sorry, I'm being a bit dumb, but what is it for? What's the purpose of having it there?
well, I think somebody you included protested to the word handler because it's not just handling. I mean, it's just a matter
I
of
understand that,
correctness, basically.
It doesn't have to be there. It could very easily, and I think we had brought up something because Laura, who's the Pet Partners volunteer, she kept saying, what do we call ourselves? What are we doing? And so it was kind of a way to address that as well.
And my understanding was that
animal assisted support program, wouldn't we?
right, but Laura was okay with the name handler. It was the other people that said handler is not, kosher for many reasons nowadays.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I was just wondering whether it needed to be on the chart, because
that was
the actual.
Oh, sorry.
The actual definition now was that they would call themselves animal assisted support programs. So we don't need the term animal handler in here anymore.
No, this was referring to the person who comes with the animal.
Right.
Because they're a component of the
team
or the education.
Okay.
But I don't know if we need to deal with what to call the people involved
In
necessarily
this
right
chart,
now.
yeah.
This chart now, yeah.
I think we do need to decide, absolutely, but for this chart, yeah.
Okay.
But didn't someone just suggest earlier in this meeting that we call them, we could call them visitation animals?
Yeah. Buffy, no. No, little girl. Shh. Come on.
But then that's not giving the term to the human, but the human would be an animal assisted support person.
Right. Oh, I like that. It doesn't totally take care of it. For instance, I once saw a film of an occupational therapist where there was somebody who was responsible for the dog while the occupational therapist was, there's that model, diamond model also.
But then that doesn't actually clarify the whole purpose, which is if I'm a animal assisted, like if I'm a psychologist and I'm bringing in a handler or an animal specialist, it's going to be irrelevant and inappropriate to say that I'm bringing in a support
Right.
I mean,
an assistant.
Maybe has anyone thought about animal support person rather than an animal handler or an animal specialist? Rather than assisted, just an animal support person.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
You can do that for now until we.
Because then we sidestep the animal specialist, because the dog trainers, the animal trainers that are degreed felt that term animal specialist should stay within their scope, and then not be handed out willy-nilly to people that have done a couple of weekends training with some knowledge and some skill. But maybe they are an animal support person because they're supporting the animal. They're not a specialist of the animal. They're not a handler of the animal. They're literally supporting the animal
the animal's doing the work.
While the animals then supporting the humans in whatever scope that they've been brought into.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. So that feels okay?
Yep.
All right, so
that feels a lot cleaner. What's that little green term above the in the orange column on the right term? The specialized.
It says handler, and if we're talking about changing it, I have to just remember to change it there too.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I have some questions about the orange. I think something got lost in with all the switching. Somehow, again, crisis intervention, why is it together with courthouse dogs? Somehow it's creeped in again to all sorts of places where we had a thought.
Hold on. Yeah, so maybe I opened up. Hold on.
Let's go through that now then. The orange column.
Make sure I opened up the. Make sure I opened up the right one. Now, where is it now? We had was this one, right? That was Nancy's version. Wait, we were using Nancy. You had changed it, so we were using this one.
Okay.
Right. So,
and then where's the community social worker there that I thought was put in there, and no, I don't see it. So I'm wondering.
And the prison programs I thought would go under specialized active involvement too, but I don't see that there.
Under here?
Yeah, I don't know what you call those prison programs, but
we talked about even putting them under the AAE at some point.
Either way, I'm fine. I mean, they're educational too, but I don't know.
I think that it's definitely, the ones that I know are very psychoeducational.
Yep. So I think that was here.
And those are the prison dog training programs you're referring to.
They may
Yeah.
be job
Right.
training, but they also,
Yeah.
for instance, I know the program that we have in Israel, what they do is they're taking dogs who've been abandoned.
Yeah,
And
right,
then they're training them and preparing them to
For
be
adoption.
adopted
right.
by families. And then
Mhm.
then they see a lot of things that they're like, the identification. I was abandoned, I was abused, and now.
But is it very clear? Is it very clear that there are actually goals for the human while they're
The
doing
programs
it?
I know it's very, very clear. Extremely
Well,
clear.
I know what you're saying, but Meg, there are some that you're right that don't like mine. We do have very specific human goals, but sometimes like leader dogs for the blind, for example, like if they're doing training guide dogs, those are puppy driven. Like there's nothing else.
Nothing for the people.
Right. So.
Well, it doesn't have to cover all the programs. So the ones that don't have goals are just not going to be
Right. This one's
included there.
Exactly.
So those would go, I think there's a next page where.
Yeah, the next page. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we're going to put in the community social work under the support programs too.
Instead of, where'd it go? Where did it just go? Because
I thought it was actually in there and now I don't see it.
yeah, it's right here. You put it right
it's
here.
under treatment.
Community social work.
Well, no, I know it was there, but I thought afterwards we said because it's not therapy, it's not, that's the question.
Right.
I thought
Right.
somehow it was moved over to the orange
Oh, it maybe
at one point, and now I don't see.
we could.
Does that make sense, everybody?
I don't know enough about it really. I know that in Australia, so they do. It's different in different countries, isn't it? So
Yeah.
in Australia, social workers can offer therapy, but they might be a mental health specialist as well as just generic therapy or not. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where it starts to get really tricky across countries.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
And that's where the asterisks come in. Clinicians need to operate within their scope of
Exactly,
practice
yeah.
and within their country's regulations or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make room for that, Amy, I think, perhaps I'm wrong, that the up above the, if you scroll up just a little bit, one of those support dogs in dental and medical offices,
yeah.
I think that goes
Yep.
into the visitation column.
Yes.
Yep,
yes,
you're right.
definitely.
So
Yeah,
now
I think
you've got
we were
room
just
for
gonna
your
say,
social work.
yes, we could
Yeah.
say.
I think you're working on a couple of different documents, I think.
Well, I
No,
thought so, but when I went back to the other one, it was
I
not,
know.
so. Yeah.
Right.
yeah, because I remember we had changed things and all of a sudden, yeah. It was,
Yeah, I feel that too. That's
and,
why I just changed this to today's date so that we know
yeah, that's a good idea.
it doesn't get lost.
And
Okay.
probably the crisis intervention should not be together with the courthouse dogs. I mean,
Right.
no,
Yeah, they should be two separate.
yeah, which the crisis intervention is already in the visitation.
Yeah, we set up here. Yeah, we set.
Right.
Yeah.
We put them up here.
Right, so we can just take that off.
So that, and then we were leaving it in both.
Yes,
houses?
because there are two types of crisis intervention. One is just sort of visiting the site, and another one is what Nancy
it.
was explaining, doing
Yeah.
a lot more
Yep.
specialized work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
yep, yep.
actually, the courthouse dogs is more.
I'm not sure
special.
what they do, so I don't know if it's just visitation or do more of the work that.
Okay, I've seen two different explanations at different times. I know the one I first knew from David Crenshaw, who has a lot to do with that, was that the dogs were brought in. First of all, they create a relationship with the child that has to be brought to court to testify, and then sitting there with the child while they're waiting to testify, and then they go in, and while the child is testifying, The dog is sitting there. Actually the dog is hidden by law, has to be hidden. Not
Laying
to create
under the-
empathy, whatever, but if the child stops talking, then the dog is trained to put his chin on the knee. The child starts patting the dog. The oxytocin flows in. And he starts talking. So in that way, it's, but then when I looked on it a couple of weeks ago, just, sure, all of a sudden that wasn't there, but that was in a couple of years ago when I looked. So I don't know.
My personal feeling is that it would go under specialized, more active involvement because it does require a bit more training of the dog than the visitation ones, but I'm not sure.
I agree.
We do not want it here?
In the next
think so.
column,
on
the right.
But maybe in this place.
Or in both.
Where it says courthouse dogs now under visitation, another group that's using animals for visitation commonly is like people in clergy and so on, visiting shut-ins and things like that. Perhaps that could be added to the visitation column in that space.
But the courthouse dog doesn't need to be there, right? Because it's not visitation.
I agree that it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
But clergy is using therapy dogs, visiting dogs a lot in our area.
So would that still fall under visitation program?
Yes,
Yeah.
it would, Amy, you're right. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I'll just move this a little. So this one even doesn't, oh yeah, that's a visitation, never mind.
That's visitation.
Yep. Okay, so then we'll say hospitals, clergy.
I would add there, including resident animals or facility animals, whatever they're called, the ones that actually live at a nursing home, things like that. Because the clients visit with the animal, or the cat is brought in to visit with a client, but it's not specialized.
Right.
And a lot of times they're kind of free roaming.
Right.
Residential animals. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
is that, yeah.
So yeah,
That sounds more like human animal interaction,
yeah.
I think.
We have that in there, like facility animals.
I
don't think they're anywhere now. No.
Yeah, it probably should be.
Other?
Interactions, other, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Residential.
Facility dogs, whatever they call
them.
I know at the emergency shelter where I worked at for 18 years, we've had now on the second dog, it's the effect on the children, on the staff is just stupendous.
Yeah. Okay, so yay, so then we have that, and then did we want to talk about like the definitions, or do you feel kind of
could we finish with the graphs? There are two more pages of the graphics. So at this point, service dog versus assistance dogs, do we want a distinction there? Because I just read the huge article from La Trobe University, and they were saying that they should all be called service dogs.
ADI, the president of ADI messaged and said that it's assistance dogs is the umbrella, and service is one example underneath assistance.
Okay, so
what I've read.
So assistance dogs would be all the other working dogs as well, or?
Assistance dogs would include service dogs. You're right.
And what else would they include? So service dogs are for
like mobility,
medical alert,
autism, psychiatric, all of those are service dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So who's left to be assistant dog that's not a service dog?
Medical alert dogs, autism support dogs.
Well, those are called service dogs. I work with autism support dogs are called service dogs.
And we talked about,
the reference Amy just made has them separated out,
Okay,
I believe.
Yeah, because if you look on their website, I mean, they
Yeah.
have guide dogs, hearing dogs, mobility dogs, it's service dogs. So I think, but they separate it out. So I don't
They
know.
do.
so
enough about
who
it.
gets
complex.
service
It's a
dogs if
really
not
complex
autistic,
area.
psychiatric, vision impaired, hearing impaired, mobility impaired, alert? Who gets a service dog other than that? Because then that's a big issue right now, because we either name all those dogs under assistant dogs, or we assume that service dogs means for the blind, hearing impaired, autistic, psychiatric for PTSD,
Yeah.
including medical alert, and so on.
How much are we even supposed to be getting into all this?
Yeah, not like that. Yeah, this
Yeah.
stuff was, we're not defining this. Right. So the person or the group that's writing up this, they're talking about like, this is another category. We're not addressing it, but here's what it is. So
the dogs that people bring for clergy, for courtroom, those are not called assistance dogs. That's what needs to be made clear.
Right. Yes.
Right. So assistance dogs are really just dogs that are assisting one patient, client, whatever it is. The human is not okay. Well,
yeah, the distinction goals are for training outcomes in animals, dogs. Placement of animals to work with an individual does not constitute AAI. So
we
or
could
AAS
change
now?
that to AAS now.
Yep.
AAS.
Yep.
Okay, that's clear now.
And we might need to change that everywhere where we go. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'll try to catch it where I see it.
And what should we call with that green note up the top? What should we just play with that now? The specialized active involvement of the, what were you talking about, the animal or the person?
The person.
Yeah.
Of the human person, the human partner of the team.
Could we just call it specialized and just sort of leave it?
Sure. Or specialized activities or specialized I don't know.
Where do you want?
We're in the right column of the orange.
I thought you said green. Oh, that's
yeah.
Oh God. Oh yeah, I know you said. Oh, this right here. Okay, got it. You said green. I thought we were over.
Me too.
Yeah. Sorry.
Got it.
Could we just call that specialized programs? Just instead of all the, just specialized programs.
Yeah.
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 And as far as headings, I was just wondering, I don't have an opinion, but in the back to the green where it says animal assisted education, is it education or is it learning? Which of those terms is most applicable for the oval, the green oval?
Yeah. We did, that was one of the things we took the vote on, and it became education.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah.
Good.
Given that the context with equine is equine assisted learning, do we want to put that to name specifically in our chart to just include that broad term, or do we not? And it's the same thing with, because animal assisted education includes, could we have that animal assisted includes learning?
Well, it says they're learning, doesn't it? Includes social and behavioral learning.
Yeah. It's just I'm just wondering, just so that like it's really clear. Animal assisted psychoeducation includes social and behavioral learning, or social and emotional learning.
Social, emotional, and behavioral.
Isn't education like an overarching term that implies learning anyway? I mean, I don't
Right.
seem to see what's the distinction between
I think in the
learning to me
equine,
is smaller than education. Education is larger than
I
learning.
think in the equine world is that it's used so much.
It's just that it's called, instead of AAE, they call it EAL. So it's just that we're just being different to the equine field. And so I was just wondering if we could, but it doesn't look like we can make it any more specifically obvious. It should just be obvious enough at that level.
Yeah, I think so.
Would it help to have a rectangle specifically called equine assisted learning on that right green column?
I would think so. But it's only like because it's like it is a little similar to like prison-based training programs, like in the sense that yeah, I think it's distinct enough because it's so massive in America and it's so massive in Australia that it probably needs to be named.
Do you want an EAL or do you want an equine assisted?
Equine assisted learning / equine facilitated learning.
Or just facilitated / assisted or something.
Yeah, equine assisted / facilitated learning. Yeah. Yeah, because it really is a big movement in and of itself, and it's better like prison-based training programs. That's a big kind of
right.
Yeah. Well, that's starting to look like take some shape. So
yeah,
that
looks good.
Okay. Awesome.
So this is what we're going to be referring to from now on. So when I get the problem with me is when I get all the little documents, I get confused about what's the current and what's the old. And so
there it is, 6/24.
Yeah, so I've just got to look for the dates. So yeah, maybe, I mean, we can't have it as final yet, can we? But
the date makes it much clearer.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to say that hasn't been said? Did we miss anything?
Yeah, so what we just clarified is that we're not really defining the other page. We're just naming them in general, and then another group is doing that. So our focus is really on this first page. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And this will guide the rubric that, and then it will also guide the definitions and the paper in general.
Can you go up a little bit?
Yep.
Again? Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay. Perfect.
Oh, under the blue, I don't think we need psychotherapy including. I think psychotherapy, we don't need the word including. I think psychotherapy can just be in its own box. On the blue, on the right column underneath
why is that different from psychotherapy practiced by, or are we getting to the whole thing of the different countries?
Oh, well, I don't think we need the word including.
But psychotherapy, the name over psychotherapy, counseling, social work, and coaching?
No, it's not the name that covers the groups underneath, the terms underneath it. It's just a term independent.
Psychotherapy is a domain in itself. It doesn't, and Meg, I think, suggests that psychology is a different field, a different domain. But would psychotherapy include play therapy? Because actually in this country, play therapy has, yes, okay. So I thought that's what you wanted, including play therapy or something that's not so obvious, but it's pretty obvious as part of psychotherapy. So I don't think we,
Yeah.
I agree
just
that the
think we
word
delete the word
including does not
including.
really add anything
Again,
there.
it depends on the country. It depends on the country.
Right. You're saying, Nancy, that it's different in yours, like psychotherapy.
Well,
like
it's like,
psychologists do psychotherapy, counseling, they can do psychotherapies.
all
etc.
4 of those can do psychotherapy, yeah.
And I'm
not
not sure.
For instance, what would animal-assisted psychology be that's not psychotherapy?
It would be psychology.
What?
It would be psychology.
No, what would be an example of animal-assisted psychology that's not?
All I'm saying is that it's a distinct discipline enough to have it listed without it saying assume with the assumption of the word including, because you in Israel, you might say psychotherapy and that might include the other 4, but in all the other countries it doesn't.
I understand. I'm just looking for an example, because if it's separate than psychology, counseling, social work, and coaching, then if the word psychology is there under animal-assisted treatment, what would a psychologist who's not doing psychotherapy, how would they be assisted by animals? That's the point.
They'll be doing animal-assisted psychology.
What would they do? Can you give me an example?
It's
not psychotherapy.
It's a big issue in Australia, Nancy. The
No,
psychologists do not use the word psychotherapy. They would say, yes. So it's just that it can't be blended in some countries. So it just needs to be separate, I think.
But do they provide clinical services? Do they call the people they work with patients, clients, or what kind of services?
They offer psychological services or clinical services.
That are not, they themselves don't consider those services to be therapy.
They do not use the term psychotherapy necessarily, unless they've trained as a psychotherapist as well.
Okay, but there's a treatment plan there, right? I guess, I guess my understanding, and probably Nancy has the same approach, is that therapy involves treatment plans, but psychology doesn't necessarily involve.
I mean, if you're a social psychologist or you're
exactly
different, or
you can be educational psychologist, school psychologist,
doing
assessment.
They're not doing any treatments. They're just doing research. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
They would call them psychological services.
Could we call them clinical psychologists?
They would call them clinical services, psychological services. They would.
I think that would be clarifying a little bit. Clinical psychology, counseling. Okay, that, because clearly under treatment, you're not going to have a research psychologist,
right?
Or, a school psychologist, right? Who does cognitive testing of IQs and stuff like that. So could we add the word clinical then, maybe? Would that?
Yeah.
That specializes it too much, Daniela, because in Australia, a psychologist and a clinical psychologist is a different training pathway. So, and they get a completely different remuneration, and they have different peak bodies that govern them.
But in this country, I'm a research psychologist. I don't work with individual clients at all. I do experiments.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's something that we can easily work
so I think
with across.
We're not, my personal preference would be to not have psychology there as different from psychotherapy, unless it's clinical psychology specifically under treatment. If you use dogs when you do an IQ test with a kid in a school, that's something different. You're a school psychologist, you do IQ testing, and you think that having your dog there would help with anxiety.
But that's no different to animal-assisted occupational therapy, animal-assisted psychology. It's the same thing. Now we're getting into talking about what they're doing. And that's not something that we're focusing on, is discussing exactly what they're doing. It's just that that they would use the term psychology rather than psychotherapy in Australia.
What about other countries? Is there anyone else from another country here? Because just like Nancy, I don't think that's a distinction that needs to be made at this level, but anyway.
I'm
Is
sorry.
there something in
This is-
another?
Yeah, I can say my first words tonight. I agree with Meg, because in the Netherlands, there is, when students study psychology, they have a basic degree of psychology, and they can assist to other psychologists with more experience. That's the second level. And then there is a third level, and that is the psychotherapy. That's the highest level of psychology. So there is really a difference. It's not the same.
So how are animals used by psychologists?
Exactly.
Or
That's, I
evolved?
still don't understand.
Yeah, but
Is it a field? Is it a field?
There are two, no, it's not really a field in the Netherlands, but the psychologist is different from the psychotherapist.
No, I think we understand that.
Psychotherapist has a higher education.
No, I think we understand that. I think what Danielle and I are saying, with somebody who has a degree in psychology and not a psychotherapist, does he do anything with animals?
Well, it's not that really so much developed in the Netherlands, but
Or what would they do?
they would treat, they would give a treatment, both of them. But the psychotherapist has a higher degree, has had, I think, about 4 years more of academic studies than the psychologist. It's like a general doctor, a general family doctor. And then if you would have a specialist like an oncologist or a surgeon, that needs extra specialization.
I think I know what you're saying, because in Israel, it's an iffy issue, where a clinical psychologist will have all the courses in psychotherapy. They will be called a clinical psychologist working with patients or clients for 20 years. But only only if they do what's called advanced learning in psychotherapy can they call themselves a psychotherapist. Maybe that's what you're
in the Netherlands. It's a registered title. You can only name yourself a psychotherapist if you have the degree.
But you can
and
still,
otherwise you cannot.
But you can still do therapy even though you don't have.
You don't use the word therapy, because the occupational therapist is also doing therapy, and the psychologist is also doing treatment therapy. It's the psychotherapist that has a higher degree.
But then what are they doing?
They give specialized treatments, yes, and they have a very they are more specialized in intervision, intravision, and so on. They have a higher level of degree.
No, I understand the degree. I'm saying somebody comes to them, to their office, and they meet with them.
Yeah.
What do they do?
It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters what they do. I think it's the same thing Nancy is saying, that we've got a distinction box between psychotherapy and counseling. Like some people would say they're the same thing. What's the difference? What do they do? It's just that they are different disciplines, and the different disciplines can train in animal assisted therapy and then say that they're doing animal assisted counseling, animal assisted social work, animal assisted psychotherapy, animal assisted psychology, and they're going to be discipline bound because their scope of practice is defined by their discipline and their peak bodies. So I hear what you're saying and I understand the dilemma, but it's just it's different enough for it to be a discipline specific training. And I think we have to, if we're including a distinction box between counseling and psychotherapy, we have to have a distinction box between psychology and psychotherapy. It's I just think it's safer.
I think in this
include rather than
country,
to
it would
exclude.
be called clinical psychology, which is different from psychotherapy, but it's still clinical psychology. And so my
Yeah,
problem is
I
that the
hear
word
that.
psychology is way too
Too broad.
broad, and you can't use engage animals if you're, you know, a psychologist that does research or does, I mean, you could,
Yeah.
but
No,
It's the
that's,
same
it's
thing
not
as
about
social work,
research. It's really
Daniela.
not about
It's the same thing as
research.
social
It's
work.
about, it's about people treating people, in this case with animals, and they have a certain level of education. And a psychotherapist in the Netherlands,
right, the distinction is clear. I'm just saying that in the US, these people who are not psychotherapists but do psychology with clients and have treatment plans are called clinical psychologists, to distinguish them from school psychologists and from other types of psychologists. So the word psychology is sort of way too broad, and more so than counseling, social work, and so on, where clearly there's a field in which animals are engaged in the process of counseling. I would have absolutely no problem listing psychotherapy, clinical psychology, counseling, social work, coaching, and so on. But again, I mean, you know, I that's my understanding of the field of psychology. But if there are people who are psychologists in other countries that are not clinical psychologists and still do treatment, maybe that is
That's what happens in Australia, Daniela.
really, and they're not clinical psychologists.
And they're not clinical psychologists. And they have a different there. We've got general psychologists, we've got clinical psychologists, and neither of them would identify as psychotherapy, but they might include particular strains of psychotherapy that they might have trained in, like CBT or IFS, or, you know, we could go on and on and on. I just don't think we need to spend all this time around it. It's enough that it's distinctly different enough across some countries for it to be separated. It would be what I would recommend, given what it is in Australia and what Bridget's saying.
Should we add like the asterisk to it where it says you still have to operate within your scope of practice and within your country's regulations?
I think this applies to every single discipline that's listed under that blue, is that every single discipline is governed by a current registration to a peak body. They've done their quals and they have current registration. That's what it should be applied to, all of those boxes, that everybody has their qualification and their current registration or licensure, whatever it's called in America, licensure or license. Yeah, licensing.
Right. Well, right.
I just think that applies to all of it.
Sorry, I have a question. I'm not sure if how to use the terminology, for example, in this case, with animal-assisted treatment, for instance, psychotherapy. You use psychotherapy, animal-assisted treatment, or you use animal-assisted treatment, psychotherapy?
In the scientific literature, they use equine-assisted psychotherapy or animal-assisted psychotherapy.
Okay, so the terminology of treatment, where we use it?
Well, this is label. You don't have to use it when you call yourself something or other. It's just the general label for us to.
Field. It's label for the field. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We had an interesting discussion about that earlier on.
These are our recommendations, but I don't think, like, for example, you know, people will still say whatever they want to say. You know, whether I, for example, am going to change the training name and practice name to animal assisted treatment or equine assisted treatment, I don't think so, because I want to be much more specific and say that it's animal assisted psychotherapy or equine assisted psychotherapy. But it belongs under
It's
the
an umbrella
umbrella term
term. It's
of
an umbrella.
animal-assisted treatment.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of just, I think, getting in the ballpark of, is it AAT, E, or SP?
You know, it might even help to see animal AATR for treatment or something, to change it from the AAT that was. I'm just, you know, what do you guys think of that? Of the X, you put the X in. Because it's the same one as all those other years where everything was animal-assisted therapy.
I like it with the X.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea.
Yes.
Yay.
I think that's important, like with the SP. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, yay. So progress.
Wow, I think so.
So moving forward, how should we focus in on the definitions? Do you think, Amy and Nancy and team?
Well, I can do we want to start from scratch in the definitions, or do you want to start from something that's already in
I think it'd be
existence?
great to start from scratch and to actually have maybe divide us into groups. Like maybe we could have little working groups that provide definitions on all the categories, the T and then we actually, so that we can lose the old terminology and start working specifically with the definitions.
Okay. So I can make a document. So we want to do like a sign up for people who are not here, so we can just send it around as like sign up for which group, and then.
Yeah, and I think Daniela already like emailed in the thread some beginning definitions. So maybe we could throw Danielle's definitions in there as a place to get started from.
Yeah, just this morning, I had put them up there in February or something, but it's actually the treatment, education, and these other program services that.
Missed that.
So maybe should we just focus on the major three overarching categories, and then we could go into specifics?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the word therapy could be replaced with treatment now that we agreed on that, obviously.
I think a sign up's a good idea, and people can kind of, work in there.
Okay.
If they have a specific.
I think it would be a good
area of
idea, though,
knowledge
if anyone signs up who wasn't in the meeting today, say, please look at the recording before you go ahead and write, because we really honed in on so much today. And I think so much meaningful work was done today that I think they need to see this.
And refer to the most recent graphic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this graphic is really very useful. I think now that it kind of includes pretty much all areas of practice that, most of us know about. But if anyone else has some other, type of practice that's not included in there, and they think it's a separate type of practice, they should quickly tell us. Or
Okay.
And I want to say that I'm happy with the work that's been done so far right now, especially today. I really felt that we went forward. There's somebody, I don't want to name names, but somebody who's decided to stop coming because they didn't understand why we needed all the explanations in the graph. Isn't just enough to leave it AAT. Okay, well, first of all, then what have we done? But I think what's really important here is that people in the field, whatever they're working on, whatever intervention, whatever you want to call it, where do I fit in here?
Mhm.
And I think that's really important that people are going to know, where do they fit in here? They're going to
Right.
want to know that they fit in. They're going to want to know that they're included, but where am I?
Right.
And I sincerely hope it will help researchers. Sincerely hope and pray and beg researchers to take this into account and to get some
Yeah.
meaning.
Oh, sorry. The neighbors are outside. Sorry, they're all going crazy.
You know, there has been a call in some scientific papers that we need to adjust to a certain language because all the research that has been published uses other terminology. So there is also a call from research papers. Please use
Yes,
a language that you agree upon.
The meta-analyses are talking about, each and every one of the meta-analyses are talking about this.
Yeah.
And then people can use the right terminology in terms of the variables.
Yeah, right.
And the
Right.
operationalization of the variables. And then people will know what's being researched and then
Right.
apply it and then compare it to the appropriate one.
Yeah, that's why we have this global group so that, you know, Ohio will already post it on theirs and AAI will post it on theirs and like everybody who's wants to be involved, you know, hopefully I say as well that everybody agrees so that it's out there everywhere. So no matter where you search, you're getting the same set of definitions.
Right.
Exactly.
And even, I think even for lay people or for people outside of the field or entry-level professionals, it's going to be so nice to have consistent, clear terminology that hopefully everyone will be using. And there's, at all levels.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, so then I'll do that for next steps, and then we can work through Google Docs for a little bit, and then do you want to meet again in a few weeks?
Yes.
And are you
So
going to
can I just clarify?
I'm sorry.
Can I just clarify, Amy? So we'll work on those three broad definitions, the T, the E, and the SP. And we've also got the other Google Doc going that Miyako has done the intro part of and that I've hopped in and edited around. Is there anything else going in that other Google Doc that needs support? And what's our plan forward going forward?
Yeah, that other doc, I'll pull it up. Will end up being our white paper, right? So everybody's contributing to the different parts that we had talked about. Let me just pull it up.
So that's where our chart will be included and our definitions will be included and everything will chunk into the white paper. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can't go any further in the white paper until we actually nut out. The chart is starting to look formed and then we get the definitions formed and then we come back to that white paper. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes. Oh yeah. So here's that document. I'll call it up. So yeah, so Miyako and Meg started with the who we are, how we got started, like that part. That's easy to do without having all the other information. But like our needs assessment, you know, what we are not defining, you know, we're not defining it in this context in our article. So here's what it is. Here's some things that fall into that category. Here's why we're not including it in our work. Because we're focusing on.
So what we're doing now is number 4. Is that right? We're basically doing number 4. Yes. We're doing what we are defining and we're doing the chart. So the 5th chart, that's number 5. So we're doing number 5 today and we're doing number 4, which is the definitions.
Yes.
A little bit of number 4.
Yes. And this is where too. So the rubric will fit in between like at 4.5, you know, in that space.
When you say environment, are you talking about setting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Someone said setting. Yep. So yeah, so we won't be able to do this until we have
Right.
that.
Yeah, great.
completed.
Okay, so let's prioritize getting the chart 100% and then getting the definitions 1, 2, and 3. And once we've got 1, 2, and 3 agreed upon, then we'll get all the rest of the definitions about the subcategories under the 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll plop them in that Google Doc, and then we'll see what the actions are that are left over. Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That helps me.
I'm curious about Ohio in September. Is this something that we're going to present at the Ohio conference?
That was our goal.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm. That's our goal, that we have, I mean, and even if we don't have it 100%, at least we have something that we can
Right.
propose to
Right.
the membership. Mhm.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to ask about, Amy and group, is that there are people that have never attended the meeting that are listed down in our group, and there's people maybe that have withdrawn. And I'm wondering whether we actually need to also be more accurate about who's actually doing this process.
You mean
so
for
that
like,
it's
author,
a little bit
you mean like
clearer.
authorship, like for authorship and membership of the
Exactly.
group? Yeah, no, for sure. Like if
Yeah.
you attended one meeting, then yeah, probably not, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's certain people, and even if they're not like I know Debbie has not, because of her the time difference. It's 4 o'clock in the morning there, but she is still like actively watching the content. She's
Exactly.
yeah, so she's still contributing. So
Yeah.
I want to
I
count.
think what I'm talking about is the contributors, and
Yes.
that we're clear about you know about that. But I mean, I haven't been in one before, so I don't know any of the processes, so I might be asking pretty redundant questions.
No, it is a good question, you know. And then we talk about, like, you know, what does it look like? Is it effort order? Is it alphabetical order? Is it, you know, how is it defined? Like, when we can talk about all that stuff
Later.
next time as
And
well.
is there only been one person that has formally withdrawn, Nancy and Amy, or have we had quite a few withdrawals?
Just about 20 people in the email list.
Yeah, and we probably have 10 to 12 active, I would say.
Yes, so we've only had one formal withdrawal. Everyone else
I'm aware,
is just
yeah.
not responding. Okay, because that's interesting in and of itself. That we just get we've got quite a core group of us that do attend, and I don't know whether people are just not replying, not responding, or inactive, or they're formally withdrawing. But it feels strange just emailing this bunch of people that we've never met, or that aren't sort of contributing, and it's not a big deal, but it would be good to sort of clean that up at some point.
Sure. Like, do you feel like, as a group, do you feel that because I think some people are in the group because they want to be kept in the loop, but is that enough to keep them on our mailing list?
I don't think that's an ethical way of participating.
Everyone else agree?
If that's the sole purpose.
You know, I was here tonight to state my support for the group that is doing the big job. And I had 2 months of withdrawal because I was very busy with my work. So I was there in the beginning. I wasn't there in the middle. I am there now again. But I was actually thinking of, please don't mention me in the list of contributors, because I don't feel as contributing enough. And I like to support, and I filled out all the questionnaires, but I don't want to be in the same list as you all, because you contributed a lot more than I could do. And I
But
think,
we're glad you're here. We're glad you're
yeah,
here.
okay,
You're right.
okay, but well, me too. But I think
Right.
if there are real authors of the white paper that is coming,
Right. Well, think
then
about it
that-
this way too. Sorry, Bridget. One thing we want, like, and I think there's a way to do like authorship and then a major contributor or an
Yeah.
acknowledgement section. Because I think if we only have, we want to show global representation. So if we have 5 names, 6 names, it's not the same as if we have 10 or 12 names, right? So maybe it is broken up into who's, like, if you're not actually writing the paper, then you would be listed as like a contributor or as a
Acknowledgement, yeah.
yeah, in the acknowledgement section. So you're still, it looks like we have a big group, but the people who are doing, who are attending the meetings and are doing things are not, they get to be recognized for the work that they've done.
Oh, yeah, but you deserve it. I think that's the reason I'm here tonight, to mention my support and at the same time acknowledge that I couldn't contribute as much as I would have liked to.
We appreciate it.
And I don't feel bad about it. It's your word.
Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate the support.
Okay.
Okay, is there any, oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, would it be useful? So when I was trying to structure for my own understanding what the field looks like, I made that enormous Excel table. Would it be useful to redo that and ask the other people who actually are practitioners to complete? So the rubrics were like the goals, the type of provider, the credentials of the provider, what's the animal's role, what are the organizations providing certification, if there are any, and things that I kind of find useful if I read a paper to appreciate what this activity is all about. And I'm happy to redo that sort of big table based on the new sort of organization of the labels that we have now. But again, I don't want to provide information that I am not familiar enough with. I'm a researcher, so I also don't want to continue doing this if other people don't fill in with the accurate information. It's up to you.
Yeah. The question also is how specific we get, like how much can we say in general about treatment or
So,
therapy, or just say, this is the job of an occupational therapist. An occupational therapist has to fill it out.
Exactly.
Or it's going to be something general of within the scope of the goals and practices of their particular profession. The question is, how much do we want to get into specifics?
Right, but
so
hold on, I mean,
maybe what gets left unfilled is too much specificity. So then we could just, extract definitions from what does get filled in.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
that would be great, Daniela. I think it would be really great if you redid that rubric in the terminology that we've used.
in the new terminology.
And then actually email this group and say, I've updated. Can all the discipline specific people please go in and fill in your areas? Yeah, that would be really great, I think.
Yep.
And then we can use that and send it out to people who haven't participated.
Yeah, I mean, I send it up to the entire email.
Just
I
the
don't.
whole group. Yeah.
The group, whatever you and Nancy and Amy list and the recipients. I just reply all.
I'm thinking even to people who aren't part of our larger group, because we don't have any representative for prison. For instance, for prison program, we don't have any. I don't know of anyone who's an occupational therapist who's part of our.
I see what you mean. I'm not familiar
I
with
think
at some point.
I think at some point, if we get a good start, and then we take the parameters of that really clear, defined start to that those stakeholders or to those to liaise with people, because we don't want to do it too early until we've got some really nice, clear containers for the
We don't want to
terminology.
do it too early, exactly. And also we have to decide at what point, what resolution do we want to do? So that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, because you could say, oh, let's have a psychotherapist, but there's psychodynamic psychotherapy, there's Gestalt psychotherapy, there's CBT, and they're all going to say different things. Or we want to just keep it in general of psychotherapy and give something general. So it's an issue.
I think so.
The resolution.
I think
yeah.
Yeah, let's start with that, because there'll only be a few of us, Nancy, that speak to that. And I think when Daniela puts in the general, then we'll be able to go in and look at the definitions and of our area, like OT.
And it may be enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good option, a good start. Well, if you don't mind updating it, and then we can.
Right.
It's already in pretty good shape. I mean, it just needs to be updated.
Yeah.
Right. I could do it by next Friday, maybe, or Saturday.
That's impressive.
Right.
Okay. So when do we want to meet again as a group?
Let me get my appointment book out. Friday.
I've got some scheduled surgery coming up in so I'm out for July. So I will miss the July meeting, but I can do stuff online, like when Daniela puts stuff in, and I can continue working on whatever else with defining and things like that. But I might miss the July meeting.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, hope that your surgery goes well.
Thank you.
Maybe 3 weeks, like mid-July, to give subgroups time to define the three main, three big ovals.
Yep.
Categories.
Okay, so
I think that would be a great goal if we have as a goal between now and next meeting that the documents updated by Daniela, and then the rest of the group go into their areas and start to define and specify those definitions a little. I think that's a really nice place, because then we come back with some nice broad definitions and can work into the subcategory definitions quite more of a targeted way.
All right. Do we still want do we want to change the date and time? The day and time? Do we? Is
this is a good time for me? That way, my family doesn't complain. They went to sleep and I go to my meeting.
Yeah, that works. Well, I'm out of town actually on the 15th, or the 15th, that Friday. But I mean, if we want to go into the 22nd, if that's not too far. Okay, there's a 22nd.
I'm wondering whether you guys could shift something, even though I won't be here, but for Debbie, because she's been disadvantaged by that 4 a.m. meeting every time. And I'm wondering whether there's a possibility. There may not be, but is there anything that's possible to get her closer to a normal daytime? But that would mean 2 hours later, and so that may not work.
I'll
won't work for me.
Maybe 1 in the morning, but I can do it. I've done it before.
That will really be a difficult time for me. Normally I go to bed at night at 10 o'clock, and that would be, I think it would be
just 2
a.m.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's just, I'm so sorry for Debbie, because it's really great to have her in here. But she's the kind of only anomaly, because I'm 6 a.m., which is workable. It's early, but it's workable. And Nancy's 11, and then we're all the rest of us seem to fall in between.
Bless you.
Thank you.
And Debbie, she watches the recordings, and she, like I said, she contributes. So if she's okay with it, then then she is okay, I think.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. So then the 7:22 at 4 p.m. my time. So whatever that is for your time. Same time as today.
Same time as this one, basically, right?
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
What did you say, Amy, the 27th?
No,
22nd?
22nd.
22, yeah.
22nd.
No, yeah,
Yes.
22nd.
Okay, that's a Friday, yeah.
4 weeks from now, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, so yay. Well, enjoy your weekend, everyone, and thank you, and
Thank you.
we'll see you online.
Cool.
Okay,
Good
take
seeing
care.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Good to
Bye-bye.
see you. Good luck with your
Bye-bye.
surgery, Meg. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.